Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Critical Thinking Through English Composition. I've been having a little bit of difficulty with my microphone this afternoon, so hopefully my microphone does not die in the middle of class, because otherwise everyone's just going to have to wait while I manually reinstall my Blue Yeti microphone, which would take a little bit of time. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Okay, let's quickly get down to business. Lots of stuff to get to today, and I hope you enjoyed today's class. Chae Sung Woo.
Here.
Here, great. And Kim Sung Jun.
Here.
Sung Jun is also here. And Lee Yong Jun. Yong Jun not here just yet. And Hwang Sung Bin.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Young Jun is here. I see. Okay, Young Jun is here. And Kevin Kwan.
Here.
Okay, good to see you. And Oh Jung No.
Here.
Also good. And Vuchi Tan.
Yes, Professor.
Okay. And Jung Jia
I'm here.
is here. And An Hyunju, sorry.
Here.
Okay, did I just call you Hyunsu rather than Hyunju? I'm so sorry. Okay, I tried to get the names right. And Lee Sumin
I'm here.
is also here. And Andrew.
I'm here.
Great. And after Andrew, we've got Ed Gorey.
I'm here.
See you. And Iris.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. And after Iris, then we've got Jack.
I'm here.
Jack is also here. And Fan Kwang An.
Present.
Great. And Jaylan.
Here.
See you right there. Good. And Bella. Oh, I can see you there. That looks like a
Yeah.
tasty beverage. And Sijjakov Yunur.
I'm here.
Sijjakov Yunur is here. Kim Tae Wook.
Present.
Okay. Oh, just a quick question for Tae Wook. Is that a real bookcase behind you, or is that just a digital background?
No, it's a background.
Oh, it's a background. Okay, I was going to say you look very professorial with the bookcase behind you. I don't have anything as impressive as that. Shin Chae Young.
Yes, I'm here.
Good to see you this afternoon. And Jo Sun Young.
Present.
Okay, good to see you as well. And Kia Canerva.
I'm here.
Right there. Perfect. And Alice.
Yes, I'm present.
Alice is also present. And last of all, Hugo. Hugo. Okay, hopefully Hugo got the message. I hope that Hugo is not sitting in J219 going, where is everyone? I did post the message on Sogang Talk Talk and also on Cyber Campus, so I hope he was able to check that. All right, so today what I'd like to do is talk about deductive argument, midterm exam. I'm also going to talk about, the midterm exam, but first I want to talk about the last three types of deductive argument and do a little bit of review from last class as well. And if my microphone suddenly conks out and you can't hear what I'm saying, please tell me, because I might not notice immediately. Here we go. Okay. A very quick review of what we did in our last class. Deductive arguments, which are this structure. If you've got a premise that's true, then the conclusion must also be true of the premise. So if you agree with the premise, then by extension, you have to agree with the conclusion. If you accept the premise, then you cannot deny the truth of the conclusion. Modus tollens, and also hypothetical, just in case you've forgotten. Modus ponens, also known as the mode of putting, if P, Q. So if the premise is true, then the conclusion is true. The premise is true. Here are a few very basic examples of this form of argument. If I study hard, I'll get an A. Really? Do you think so? Yeah, if I study hard, I'll get an A, or I'll do well on the exam. And the truth is, I do study hard. Therefore, I will get an A. Same thing, if it's bright and sunny, I will wear sunglasses. Well, it is bright and sunny. Therefore, I will wear sunglasses. The conclusion coming from the premise there. This last one I added just a little bit earlier today. If someone kicks me, I will scream in pain. Okay, so if P, then Q. P, that's true. Someone just kicked me. Therefore, I will scream in pain. Now, this is quite different from modus tollens. If P, Q, not Q, meaning Q is the conclusion is not true. Therefore, the premise is also not true. So if P, Q, not Q, therefore not P. If I study hard, I'll pass the exam. I didn't pass the exam. Well, if I didn't pass the exam, that means I didn't study hard. So if P, Q, not Q, therefore not P. Therefore, the premise itself wasn't true. If it's bright and sunny outside, she will wear sunglasses. She's not wearing sunglasses. Therefore, it's not bright and sunny outside. And here's the modus tollens version of the last example. If someone kicks me, I will scream in pain. But I'm not screaming in pain. Therefore, logically, someone didn't kick me. If someone had kicked me, then I would be screaming in pain. But I'm not screaming in pain, so therefore, someone did not kick me. And then there's the third example, hypothetical syllogisms. If P, then Q. If Q, then R. Therefore, if P, then R. So you're trying to draw a connection between multiple premises here. I thought this was a pretty easy way to look at this one. If Korea wins the World Cup, I'll owe my friend a lot of money. Maybe I gambled a lot on the results of this game. So if Korea wins the World Cup, I'll owe my friend, I'll need to go to the bank. Therefore, I can logically conclude, if Korea wins the World Cup, I'll need to go to the bank. Okay, now I want to go on to three final types of deductive argument: the disjunctive syllogism, the dilemma, and also reductio or reductio. It's sometimes fun. The disjunctive syllogism. This is where you're looking at two different options on, and only one of them can be true. And by saying that one of them is true, then logically the other one must be false. So disjunctive means like either or. It's got to be either P or Q. If it's P, then it's not Q. And if it's Q, it's definitely not P. There are two options, and then only one of them can be true. For example, there are only two options on the menu. I'm in a restaurant, and there are only two options on the menu. Either I will order the chicken or I will order the fish. I will not order the chicken for some reason. I'm sure that I will not order the chicken. Well, if I don't order the chicken, then logically I have to order the fish because I've given myself just those two examples or those two options. There's only two things on the menu. Either Bob or Joe robbed the bank. Well, if I can show that, or if I can prove that Joe did not rob the bank, then therefore Bob must have robbed the bank. I'm looking at these two possible options here. Now, somebody might argue, well, how do you know Steve didn't rob the bank? I mean, you're setting this up as an either or, right? Either Bob robbed the bank or Joe robbed the bank. Maybe it was Steve. Although this is possible, it's when you use disjunctive syllogisms, this is usually after there has been some kind of process of elimination and you're left with only two logical choices. You're not starting with just two choices. You've only got two logical things that you can choose from. This is very different from the either or the false dilemma fallacy, which is where somebody starts with two choices, like you must be spending a lot of money or you must be saving a lot of money. Hey, you've got a job, so you must be saving a lot of money or spending a lot of money. That's very different. when you use the hypothetical syllogism, you're looking at only two possible options. There's either no other options available, or perhaps you've done sort of process of elimination. I'll give one final example. I'm feeling a little bit tired and I'd like to have a cup of coffee. Okay, well, I will drink some Maxim coffee. Or I will drink some Sangtao. There are no other types of coffee in my house. If I drink this, then I will not drink this. If I drink this, then I will not drink that. So you're looking at two very clearly delineated choices. Okay, just thought I'd bring that up. Now you know what type of coffee I like. All right, so moving on. Now we are moving on to dilemmas. This is a case where you've got possibilities and both of them have something unpleasant. So the closer to other with their spikes, but if they remain apart, they'll be lonely. And so if someone inevitably creates conflict and provocations and opens us up to a lot of pain, but on the other hand, we're lonely when we stand apart. Oh, very nice analogy. So this is an example of a dilemma. Get close and then you risk the loneliness of being apart. So if you have a dilemma, you've got two possible options, two logical possibilities, but both of which have unappealing consequences. This is something to remember. When you have a dilemma, there usually is something negative associated with both possibilities. If you choose option number one, there's a good chance that something unfortunate or unpleasing will happen. And if you choose the second option, there's also something else that is very unattractive that might happen. So it's a dilemma. You're choosing between quite often two unpleasant choices. Okay, and the final one here, this is a very entertaining deductive argument. It's called reductio ad absurdum or reductio ad absurdum. I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways. It basically means you're taking a claim and you're proving that it's false by accepting the possibility that it could be true and saying, well, if this could be true, well, then something else is true as a result. And that extra thing, which we call Q, is highly unlikely, actually impossible, or ridiculous, must actually be true. For example, that's P. And if the person wants to prove or argue that no one has yet had sex in space or joined the 62-mile high club, then the person will assume the opposite. Okay, let's assume that someone has had sex in space. That would be not P. Well, if that is true, well, that means that someone has had sex in space and then didn't tell anyone. They kept it a secret and they didn't put it on the internet. And that by itself is really hard to believe, according to the book, because no one would keep that to themselves. Therefore, it's highly, highly unlikely. That's an example of reductio ad absurdum. But first, I want deductive forms. I'm going to give you a set of premises that are going to enable you to draw a specific conclusion. And I'd like to get a couple of people to tell me what conclusion they can draw using a particular kind of deductive argument, whether it's modus ponens, modus tollens, a hypothetical syllogism, a disjunctive syllogism, a dilemma, or the reductio ad absurdum. Let's take a look at a couple. I'll give you one example just to start off with. You can see these very cute dolphins here. Here's the example. If dolphins act as the psychology behind their behavior is probably similar to ours. Dolphins do act similarly to us under similar circumstances. Okay, well, if this is what I give you on the exam, or if this is how you want to look at an argument, what can you conclude from that last line? Let's go back to the beginning. If dolphins act similarly to us under similar circumstances, the psychology behind their behavior is probably similar to ours. You know, you put dolphins in a dangerous situation, maybe they act similar, or whatever. If dolphins act similarly to us under similar circumstances, then the psychology behind the dolphins might be similar to ours. Now, if that is true, that dolphins do act similarly to us under similar circumstances, well, then we can make this conclusion. Using modus ponens, we can conclude that the psychology behind dolphins' behavior is probably similar to ours. Using P for dolphins act similar to us, and Q for the psychology behind dolphins' behavior is probably similar to ours, we can symbolize the premises as this. If P, then Q. P, I mean, P is true, the premises is factual, therefore Q. So if dolphins act in a similar manner to people under similar circumstances, then Q, then the psychology behind those actions is probably similar to people's. It turns out, okay, P is true. Dolphins do act similar to people in similar situations. Therefore, we can conclude that Q is true. The psychology behind dolphins' behavior is probably similar to ours. That's how you could use modus ponens in that case. Let's take a look at this other example here. If the SAT were a useful test, it would test skills like research and critical analysis. It does not test those skills. I'm going to choose Kia Canerva.
Yes.
Okay. So by looking at the first part of this argument, you can probably see that I'm using a particular deductive form. What is
Yeah.
that deductive form, and what could we conclude using that?
Was it the modus tollens? Anyways, that it does not test those skills, therefore the SAT is not a useful test.
That's
But I
right.
don't remember the word for it.
I'm not going to attest to the validity of that argument. I think it has a different usefulness, but then I'm quite cynical. I think quite often tests are useful in the sense that they divide students into different groups, but that's a very cynical way of looking at education. But yeah, if the SAT were a useful test, that's P. It would test skills like research and critical analysis, Q. It does not test those skills, meaning not Q. Therefore, not P, meaning, yeah, the SAT is not a useful test. Okay, the next one, I'd actually like to put you into groups and have you look at. I believe that South America and Africa used to be joined together into a single supercontinent, but they have since drifted apart. If this continental drift, that's the name of it, the continental drift hypothesis is correct, then there could have been animals that lived nowhere but near the place where the old supercontinent split apart, where Africa and South America split apart. And if there were such animals, then there will be fossils in Eastern South America that can be found nowhere else but in Western Africa. Okay, now what I'm going to do in just a moment is have you, I'm going to put you together in groups, and I'd like you to identify what argument is being used here, what deductive form. Okay. Okay, I'll give you just a few minutes. Oh, by the way, if you want to find this PowerPoint, it is now available on Cyber Campus. I think it was posted about 5 minutes ago. So take a look at this and try to identify what deductive argument is used here. And I'll see you in just a moment. Oh, there you are. Hold on just a
Sorry.
second. I think the internet connection got lost there. Let me put you in group 5. Oh. Oh, actually, I have you here in group 3. It says that you just haven't joined.
Could you possibly invite me again, please?
The only one, log out and then log back in. I think that's the only way I can do it.
All right.
3. Okay, group. So if the content is correct. Mhm. You could hear a pin drop in this class. Okay, I'm gonna have to ask Jack. All right, so continental drift. This is the idea that there used to be a super continent, right? And it split apart a long time ago. This paragraph is using a certain deductive argument to say that, what? Don't you?
To say if this hypothesis is correct, then there will be a fossil in Eastern South America that can be found nowhere else but in Western Africa.
That's right. Now, what argument does the writer use to make that argument?
Is hypothetical syllogism.
Yes, that's hard to pronounce, isn't it? A hypothetical syllogism. Just for fun, I should put on the exam just so people remember. Hypothetical syllogism or disjunctive syllogism. What's the difference? But yeah, if the hypothesis is correct, then there could have been animals that lived nowhere else but where the supercontinent split apart. And if there were animals there, then there should be fossils there. Therefore, if the hypothesis is correct, there should be fossils there. So if P, then R. Okay, you've got it. This was the easy one, by the way. There's one coming up that's a little bit more difficult. Okay, let's go back to, oh, hold on. Oh, I almost closed the whole thing there. There we go. All right, I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to, oh, is my microphone working? I'll be lucky if this thing lasts the day. Oh, don't know. So let's take a look at the continental drift hypothesis. What deductive argument is the writer trying to make? What is the name of the argument?
We thought it would be hypothetical syllogism.
Bum, bada, bum. That is correct. Which is if P then Q, if Q then R, therefore if P then R. Explain it. Let's hear it.
We thought that P would be that South America and Africa used to be a single supercontinent. And Q would be there could have been animals that live nowhere but near the place.
Mhm.
And R would be there will be fossils in Eastern South America.
Yeah, fossils in Eastern South America that exist nowhere else except for Western Africa, which would have been where the continent split apart. Yeah, I think the supercontinent idea, I took one geology course in university about 100 years ago. I think it was called Pangea, it might be. Anyway, let's take a look. That is correct. It is a hypothetical syllogism. Yeah, if P, then Q, if Q, then R. Therefore, if P, then R. If the hypothesis is correct, that there used to be a supercontinent, then there could have been animals that lived nowhere else but in those two places. And if there were animals that lived in those two places, then there could be fossils that exist in Eastern South America that exist nowhere else but Western Africa. Okay, now let's take a look at another couple of examples here. For this one, I think the next person quite at random. Okay, Kevin, you're there, right? We have become slaves to our many busy professionals. This has become a problem, a real problem. Hold on. Yeah. This has become a real problem with work texts and emails interrupting their personal lives. Individuals could try to cut back their use on their own, or they could do it in cooperation with their colleagues. If they try to cut down on their own, however, then their colleagues may resent their time offline. And their colleagues will appreciate their time offline, however, if workers cut back in cooperation with everyone else. No, hold on.
I think, isn't it a dilemma?
Yeah, it's a bit holding. Actually, I think there's something wrong with this one. If they try to cut back on their own, then their colleagues may resent their time offline. Their colleagues will appreciate their time offline. However, if workers cut back with everyone else, then work will not get done. Sorry, I think actually I cut out the very last part of there. That must have been cut off somehow. Remember, a dilemma has to have an unappealing characteristic in both both possibilities. Yeah, that one, I think that last part got cut off. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This one is a bit more difficult. In 2012, a Turkish court convicted 330 military officers of plotting a coup back in 2003. The court's main evidence came from computer files that were allegedly created in 2003. But computer experts who examined the files found that they had been used, or they had been created using Microsoft 2007, which didn't exist in 2003. I thought this is a pretty interesting example. I'm going to put you back into groups, this time with different partners, and I'd like you to decide which deductive argument is being used here, and from that argument, what conclusion can you logically deduce? So let's recreate. Okay, and yeah, as I mentioned before, if you look on Cyber Campus, you should be able to find the PPT that I've posted there. So I'll give you about 5 minutes, decide what the argument was, and from that argument, what conclusion can you draw? Mhm.
um, we are trying to prove P. And so we want to assume that not P at first. So I think maybe files were not created in 2003 should be the P, not like files were created in 2003. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I think we have to start opposite.
Okay, so P is the files are
Is that
are
right?
valid. The
Are
files
you doing modus tollens?
the reducto
Reductio ad absurdum. We thought that's.
Ah, okay. Actually, no, this one is modus tollens.
Oh, really?
oh my gosh.
Actually, this is something maybe I should have mentioned before. There's a very good reason why modus tollens sometimes gets confused with reductio ad absurdum. And that's because both the arguments are trying to show some kind of falsehood, right? Like modus
Yeah.
tollens is if P, Q, but actually Q is not true, therefore P is not true, right? And reductio absurdum is taking a claim and saying, well, this claim is not true, and to prove that it's not true, let's assume that it is true. And when I try to show you that it is true, there's a conclusion I can draw from that, which is so ridiculous that it shows that the original idea must be false. The big difference between the two is modus tollens is just trying to prove that a part of the argument is false, and therefore the second part is false. Whereas reductio ad absurdum doesn't just want to show that it's false, but that it's ridiculous, that it's impossible, and it's stupid in some way.
Okay.
Whereas, for example, in this case, with the Turkish court, they're just trying to show if the files were created in 2003, then they couldn't have been created using Microsoft 2007, which means they couldn't have plotted the coup based on those documents. This is a pretty good example of how this sort of argument could be used in court. Now, imagine you were one of those military officers that were convicted of being part of a coup, right? Their main evidence was that, look, you're saying we were part of a military coup. And your main evidence is that there was a computer file that maybe they wrote the plot on Microsoft 2003. But if the file was actually made using Microsoft in 2007, then it must have been created after the fact.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go back to the screen there. And just a question for Bella. Are you in a cafe?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, wow, it's quiet. Okay, for a second, I thought you had your microphone on mute there for a second. Quite often when students are in cafes, they're quite loud.
But it's kind of quiet here.
Yeah, that's great that you were able to find a quiet place. Well, let's go back to the main screen and see what other groups have come up with. Working. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for some reason, my video is not turning on. My microphone is still working, but my video is not. Let me go to Yongjun. What argument do you think was used in this example? Oh, Yongjun, can you hear me?
She answered in chat. She said modus tollens.
Modus tollens, yes. Okay, just got that. Yes, modus tollens. And what conclusion can be drawn then using modus tollens? If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. Oh, just a question there. Yongjun, your microphone's not working. Yongjun, are you able to talk? Sorry, I can't use the mic. Okay. Maybe I should ask, actually, Yunur, would you like to explain?
I think I can't because I thought it was reduction ad absurdism.
Absurdum. Actually, this was something which I talked about with one of the groups in the breakout rooms. There are two arguments that are quite commonly confused for each other, and those are modus tollens and reductio ad absurdum. The big difference between them is when you use modus tollens, you're trying to show that something is false. For example, if P, then Q. Okay, actually, Q is not correct, right? Q is false. Therefore, P is not correct. You might remember the example from the previous class. If those lights in the sky are stars, then they should be, bright and arranged randomly. But they're not bright and they're not arranged randomly. Therefore, they're not stars. You've shown the falsehood of something. Reductio ad absurdum, however, doesn't just want to show that something is false. The emphasis is on something is ridiculous. Something is not just impossible, but something is laughably ridiculous or absurd. I'll give you an example here. You can sometimes use reductio ad absurdity theories. This is a very common example, the moon landing hoax. There are some people that insist that America never really landed on the moon. They say that the moon landings were a hoax. The space rocks, I've seen some videos on this actually. The moon is not really the moon. It was a Hollywood studio, and they just filmed some actors on a Hollywood movie set, and then they slowed down the speed of the video to make it look like they're moving slowly in lower gravity. They say the moon landings were a hoax. NASA employed thousands of people to put people on the moon, but in the decades since then, no one has come forward and claimed that the landings were a hoax. Now, suppose they were a hoax. It's ridiculous to think that NASA could have kept all those people silent. Therefore, the only reasonable thing to believe is that the landings were not a hoax. So in this case, you're not only trying to show that a claim is false, but it's ridiculous. With modus tollens, you're just trying to work out whether something is true or not. For example, if these lights are stars, they should be bright and randomly arranged. If they're not bright and they're not randomly arranged, therefore they're not stars. Whereas reductio ad absurdum is used to make fun of an argument and show that it's not true, because if it was true, then something else would be true. And that, which is Q, is unbelievable. So for example, if the moon landings were a hoax, then thousands of people would have, had to stay quiet for a long time. And it's ridiculous to think that NASA could have kept all of those people silent. Therefore, the only reasonable thing to believe is that the moon landings were not a hoax, because it would have been ridiculous to expect so many people to stay quiet on such a big conspiracy. And oh my gosh, we're already at 2:22. This now brings me to something that might be on the midterm exam, so I should probably bring it up now. I want to put you back into groups, but this time I want you to construct a reductio ad absurdum argument. I'm going to give you 3 examples here. Example number 1, some people believe that ordinary citizens should be able to own any weapons they want. Number 2, some people believe that ancient aliens were somehow involved in building the pyramids in Egypt. Number 3, some people believe that Earth may be the only planet in the universe that supports life. What I would like you to do is to choose just one of these beginnings of an argument, one of these claims, and then construct a reductio ad absurdum. You want to show that this argument is false. Do that by assuming that it's true. And if the argument is true, what would follow from that? And remember, what follows should be something that is unbelievable or ridiculous. And that should show that the claim itself is not true. Now, I'm going to choose 6 different people. And if we've got 3 examples here, I only want 2 groups to do each one. So I'm going to choose for group number 1, Huang Sungbin. Choose one of these 3 claims. People should be able to own any weapons they want. Ancient aliens helped build the pyramids, or Earth is the only planet that supports life. Choose one.
I think I'm gonna choose the bottom one.
The bottom one, okay. Earth is the only planet in the universe that supports life, okay. Number 2, Andrew.
The first one.
The first one, okay. People should be able to own any weapons that they want. Group number 3, Shin Chae-young.
The last one.
Last one, okay. That the universe is only capable of, Earth is the only planet that sustains life, okay. So 2 groups have got that one. Group number 4, Chae Sung-woo.
I'll go with the first one.
The first one, okay. And then for group number 5, Iris, your group will do the aliens built the pyramids, and group number 6, you'll also do the aliens built the pyramids. So remember, what I want you to do is I want you to construct a reductio ad absurdum argument. You want to show that this claim is false. For example, ordinary citizens, you think, should not be able to own any weapons that they want. How? Well, if citizens could own any weapons that they want, and then have a consequence of that, and have that consequence be so ridiculous that it will show the poorness of the argument. Same thing with ancient aliens. If ancient alien did help build the pyramids, well, what would follow from that? And from that, how does that show that this idea is false? Same thing with Earth being the only planet in the universe that supports life. Remember, when you do a reductio ad absurdum argument, you say, okay, let's imagine this argument is true. Well, if it is true, well, then something else follows from it. And that is usually something that is ridiculous or unbelievable. And that's what shows the falsehood of the claim. I'll give you about 10 minutes or so, and then let's see what arguments you have come up with. I look forward to hearing each group's ideas. Okay, let's get started. Resume recording. All right, so I would like to hear from Sumin first. Tell us which claim your group chose, and then how did you construct the reductio ad absurdum argument?
So our group chose the first one. Some people believe that ordinary citizens should be able to own any weapons that they want. And we construct argument that if students are able to own any weapons that they want.
Oh, not students, people.
Citizens.
You don't have to be a student. You don't have to finish school.
Yeah, citizens are able to own any weapons that they want, then they may drive tank on the road, which will be very dangerous. So therefore, citizens should not be able to own any weapons that they want.
Okay, yeah, and that's the point I'm looking for. You take the claim and you assume that it is true. You want to show that people shouldn't be able to own any weapons that they want. And to do that, you take the claim and you say, well, let's imagine that's true. People should be able to own any weapon. Well, if people are able to own any weapon, then that includes tanks, meaning people would be able to drive down the road in a T-34 tank or whatever model of tank they like. And that is clearly ridiculous. So you're showing not just that the original claim is false, but it is ridiculous. And people will often use the argument reductio ad absurdum when they want to show that the other person's idea is not only false, but stupid. Okay, Chae-Sung Woo, let's hear from you. I think you had the same one.
Yeah, actually, we had the exact same example of tanks running through the city, but maybe I guess I could change it to like
nuclear weapons.
Yeah, nuclear weapons, exactly.
Tanks,
it would be very
rockets.
ridiculous. So, yeah.
Yeah. If this comes from some fairly extreme gun debates in the United States, where people say the Constitution guarantees the right to get to bear arms, but it doesn't put any set limits on what kind of weapons or what kind of arms. Therefore, citizens should be able to own any kind of weapon that they want. Okay, let's move on to, I'm quite interested in the ancient aliens argument. So I'm going to move over to Guan Seijin, right? So convince me that aliens did not help build the Egyptian pyramids.
we didn't actually come up with the answer yet, but we assume that
Okay, assume that aliens did. So you want to show that the idea is false, you start off by assuming that it's true. Let's assume aliens did come from another planet and then help the ancient Egyptians build pyramids. If that's
Right.
true, then what logically follows from that?
so it would have been very hard for people back in the time to carry like large and heavy rocks to the very top of the pyramid.
Mhm.
So maybe the lack of technology or that may prove the statement.
Oh, no, you want to show that aliens didn't build,
Okay.
didn't help them. Yeah, remember, if the idea of the argument, was it reductio ad absurdum, you take somebody else's claim that usually somebody believes X, and you want to show that this idea is not only false, but it's also ridiculous. So to do that, you start off by saying, let's say it's true. If that is true, then something else logically follows. And that following thing is so ridiculous or unbelievable that we cannot believe the original claim. This is going to be on the midterm. So if you
And-
don't know it now, please make sure you check the textbook again. I'll give you one
Right.
example. If let's say aliens did come from another planet and help the ancient Egyptians build the pyramids. If that's true, I have to believe that a species that is capable, or a civilization that can make a UFO that is capable of moving across the universe did not bring any sophisticated tools for building a pyramid. We know that the pyramids were made using very basic tools. We can actually, if you look at the pyramids, you can see marks from these very simple hand tools that were used for stacking all of the bricks. You have to believe that aliens did not bring anything in their high-tech UFO in order to help build the pyramids, which is clearly a ridiculous idea. So once again, I just want to make sure everybody understands this, because there is going to be a question about it on the midterm exam.
Can I
You
go
do?
give?
Oh, yeah, you got a question?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
You can finish.
Oh, no. I'm in just a moment. I just realized we're already at 2:45 and I still have to give a little bit of information about the midterm exam. So if you've got a question, please ask. Yeah.
No, I just want to say that our group too worked on ancient aliens and Egypt,
Okay,
and we created reductio ad absurdum.
great.
Should I tell it?
Oh, please do.
Okay. Well, some people insist that ancient aliens help people to build a pyramid.
Mhm.
Is that if it is true, there would be millions of papyrus in ancient Egyptian paper.
There would be millions. Could you say that again? So if this was
Papyruses.
true, yeah.
Papyruses.
Papyrus, you mean
It's
like-
like ancient Egyptian paper.
Papyrus, okay, yeah.
Right. There would be million papyruses where people would draw aliens and describe how they helped them to build the pyramids. And these
Mhm.
papyruses, it's hard to believe that none of these papyruses survived till the modern days.
So you're saying if basically if aliens had come to Earth and helped people build the pyramids, then the Egyptians would have written something or drawn something about it, and there would be evidence that would exist until now. I could argue that I do have an Egyptian history book here that's got some very interesting pictures that look like aliens coming from the sky, but we're out of time. So let me quickly bring up my screen. I still want to talk a little bit about the midterm exam. And yeah, you're on the right track. You've got the exact right structure that I'm looking for. Perfect. When you do reductio ad absurdum, accept the argument and say, let's imagine that it's true. If it's true, then this must also be true. But that second part is something that is so ridiculous or unbelievable that it shows the original claim to be false. Okay, I'll just very quickly. Okay, so about the midterm exam. The midterm exam is going to be in 3 parts. Part 1, general rules and arguments by example. That's about 5 points. Then part 2, arguments by analogy, arguments from authority. And then finally, arguments about causes and deductive arguments. So it's been 5 points, 7 points, 8 points, 20 points total. In the first part, there's going to be a question about identifying premises and conclusion, distinguishing between the two. I think that's the first thing we did in this course. Then I'd like you to organize information in natural order. Remember, I think I gave you an example also in the first few classes where I showed you maybe, I think this was for salmon. If you take a look at a paragraph that tries to prove a point, there's certain ways you can organize the information that are logical and make sense to the reader, and there are ways that are confusing. You will probably take a paragraph that is scrambled and then put it in the correct order. Also, to identify reliable and unreliable premises, that will also be a couple of points. Remember, one of the basic rules is you want to start with reliable premises. Part 2, arguments by analogy and arguments by authority. So I'll have a question or maybe 2 questions that are related to representative examples. I might give you a case where you need to write down 2 or 3 representative examples of a situation. For example, women in the past were married at a very young age. What could be a few representative examples? Or analogies. If you take a look at an analogy, to what extent is something a relevantly similar analogy? What is the commonality here? Question number 5, a little bit about background rates and statistics. For question 6, I'll be looking at sources. Remember, we looked at a few examples of citing sources. Was it easy to identify the person's expertise in the paragraph? If we wanted to find that research paper, does the article tell us where we can find it or cite the name? So you might need to answer a question evaluating the citing of source or actually evaluating the quality of the source. For example, is the source informed? Is it impartial? Is it independent? That's going to be 7 points altogether. So 2 points, 2 points, 3 points. And then finally, this is what we've been doing most recently. Question number 7, you'll be looking at identifying and ranking causes or correlations. Remember, what is the most likely explanation? How are 2 things related? Does A cause B? Does B cause A? Does a third factor possibly cause both? And also identifying the most likely explanation or explanations. And finally, the last part, we'll just take a look at deductive arguments. I might give you a couple of examples of deductive arguments, and you might need to tell me what kind of deductive argument it is. Or I might give you part of an argument and you might need to complete it. For example, write the conclusion. And last of all, creating examples for deductive arguments. I might tell you to write an example of a certain kind of dilemma, maybe a disjunctive syllogism or a dilemma, or hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, reductio ad absurdum. I'll tell you right now, you should be ready to make an argument related to reductio ad absurdum on the exam. Just remember to follow the instructions. Okay, and that's it. So there won't be any surprises on the test. It's in 3 parts, 3 sections. Each part will have a couple of different questions each, 20 questions all up, and there's nothing surprising. All of the concepts are the same concepts we've looked at in our classes. Nothing new. The examples will be new, the questions will be new, but the concepts will be the same. Okay, if you've got any questions between now and Thursday, please put them in the group chat on Sogang Talk Talk, and I'll do my best to answer them as well as I can.
Professor, I just have a very quick question.
Sure.
How much time do we have for the test?
75 minutes.
Okay, got it.
And when I write the test, I will write an estimate for how many minutes I expect students to take on each question. I will expect students should finish it within 75 minutes. Okay, all right. Thank you very much for coming today, and I'll see everyone on Thursday. Don't forget, when you come on Thursday, there's got to be a second electronic device that shows me your face and the screen that you're working on. Okay.
Mr. Bernard?
Yeah.
Are there going to be questions where we should choose? Like
A,
you
B,
have question A and B, you can write only
oh,
A
and
or only
choose-
B.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Like we can choose what task we will do, yes?
Yes, for example, choose one of the following 2 questions. Yes. Choose
okay.
question A or question B.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, and is it gonna be the closed book exam?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Any information, I'm not going to ask a question like what is the difference between a disjunctive syllogism and a hypothetical syllogism. Yeah, I wouldn't ask for a question like that, but if you're familiar with the basic concepts, then you should be able to do it. Yes, I will upload today's video. Yeah, I will upload. Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, it's a closed book test. You should be familiar with the basic terms, but I will not be asking you to distinguish, what's the difference between modus ponens and modus tollens, but you should know what they are.
Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
All right, you too. All right.
Goodbye.
All right, I'll see everyone.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'll put this up on Cyber Campus for everyone too.
Thank you, Professor.